Hello friends, and welcome again to the Solid Signal Podcast, this time for the week of July 21st, 2014. You know what's really neat about home theater, and in fact, the entire world, is that it keeps renewing itself. There are always new people coming in who want to learn more, who want to understand, and who are looking for ways that are personally relevant to them to learn the stuff that the rest of us kind of already lived through. And that's kind of neat. And it's something that really kind of excites me as I personally get a little bit older and watch generation after generation come in and learn home theater from the beginning. So if you've been a home theater junkie for 10 years or more, this is probably going to be old hat to you. But on the other hand, you can enjoy the new treatment and the discussion of the subject of PSIP. PSIP, what is that? What does it mean? In other words, why does it happen that the channels on my TV aren't necessarily the channels that are broadcasting? And why is that important to me if I have an antenna? That's what we're going to be talking about today. I need you to hop into your time machines and go back to 2006, because way back then the future of high definition didn't really seem to make a lot of sense. I remember going to my local big box store and seeing televisions in that 4:3 aspect ratio, other ones that were widescreen like the TVs that we have today, and nobody was really sure what was going to win out. And another thing that was super confusing at that time was how were broadcasters going to get their customers to find the content they were putting out there. Super critical because broadcasters do run on eyeballs. I'll back up a little bit and explain what I mean. Starting when television first started right after the Second World War and going up to 2007, really, finding TV stations was pretty easy. You had one knob on the TV and it went from 2 to 13. Or later on you had two knobs. One went from 2 to 13 and one went from 14 to 83. You turn the knob and it would go from 3 to 4, from 4 to 5. And what was on channel 4? It said channel 4 on the screen. What was on channel 5? It said channel 5 on the screen. Broadcasters spent millions of dollars identifying themselves with the channel number they were assigned by the FCC. Even though they had call letters, every station does, and you may know them as WABC, WNAC, whatever. Really, everybody says channel 5, channel 7. That's how people understand where to find their channels. Well, this is a major problem if you're going to have a regular channel and an HD channel, because you can't have them both on channel 5, right? Because there's really only room for one. That's the problem. The solution is the Program Services Information Protocol, or PSIP. PSIP is a little bit of digital data that hitchhikes its way onto any other high-definition television signal. And what it says is, I know you're really broadcasting on channel 42, but when the TV asks, I'm going to tell it it's channel 5. It's kind of clever and kind of sneaky, but what it meant was that you could have a low standard definition channel 5 and a high definition channel 5, and the TV could put them one right after the other. As a matter of fact, you would call the high definition one 5.1 and the standard definition one just 5. This solved a ton of problems because when the digital transition did finally happen, those broadcasters who are on channel 5, for example, more likely they had to give up that slot and move somewhere up into the higher numbers, into the UHF channels, yet they could still be known as channel 5 because of that extra little bit of PSIP data that's fooling the television. It's brilliant, and it really worked. And even today, pretty much every broadcast channel still calls itself by its number, even though most of them are not broadcasting on that actual channel anymore. The problem comes when you go to buy an antenna. You see, the original idea way back 10 years ago was that all TV broadcasting was going to move its way up to UHF, but it didn't really happen that way. VHF, or what we call channel 2 through 13 if you're uninitiated, is still open for a lot of broadcasting, and UHF, which is currently channel 14 to 59, is used for the rest of it. But you need to know if you need a VHF antenna or a UHF antenna. Most of the time, if you need a VHF antenna, you actually need a combined VHF and UHF antenna. But if you have only a need for a UHF antenna, you can do a lot better. You can have a lot smaller antenna that does a lot more for you. And now you're beginning to understand the problem, because If your channels are numbered 2, 4, 5, 7, and 9, they may not actually be VHF channels, even though I told you the VHF is channel 2 through 13 because of PSIP. They may not actually be 2, 4, 5, 7, and 9. They may be 14, 18, 27, 42, and 53. It could be anything. Or some of them could be the actual right number and some could be the wrong number. That's the problem with PSIP, and that's why you need sites like tvfool.com, for example, which will tell you what actual broadcast frequencies are being used in your area, not just the channel numbers assigned to them. You see, PSIP gives a lot of peace of mind to broadcasters, and it makes it easy for people to find the channels they want if they've already got an antenna up, but it sure does make things confusing if you're looking to buy an antenna. In the future, there are those of us who believe that all broadcasting will in fact move up into the UHF bands. It's hard to say right now because the plans are to give up some more of the UHF band and keep some of the VHF band, but with the oncoming, what I like to call broadcast apocalypse, where a lot of broadcasters give back their bandwidth in exchange for a nice cash payment, it could just be that you don't need more than, say, 10 to 12 frequencies in every market. I mean, if you have an unlimited amount of time and money and space to put up a gigantic antenna in your area, then sure, you're going to put up that big UHF, VHF antenna. It's going to do everything you could conceivably need from now until the end of time. But most of us really don't have that, especially if you're in an apartment and you really need to know if you need something that's going to handle VHF or both VHF and UHF, because you can do a lot better with the UHF-only antenna if you don't need VHF. It's cheaper and in many cases more effective. So, my friends, I've prattled on about this for about 7 minutes, which is longer than I like this podcast to be. But if you have more questions about PSIP, go to the Solid Signal blog and do a search for PSIP. Ask a question and we'll get back to you.